This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to our daily roundup. We are diving into 8 essential stories today, covering everything from medical breakthroughs to shifting social trends. Let's get started with a quick look at the headlines.
New research suggests fish oil might hinder brain repair.
Graphene oxide selectively destroys superbugs while sparing human cells.
Mitochondrial proteins may unlock the Mediterranean diet's secrets.
Severe infections are linked to higher long-term dementia risks.
Extreme nighttime heat during pregnancy correlates with autism risk.
Repeated psilocybin doses show promise for treating chronic OCD.
Former Christians hold more progressive views than lifelong non-believers.
The CDC faces internal struggles despite celebrating major milestones.
First, the fish oil study.
For years, we have been told that fish oil is the ultimate brain food, but a new study from the Medical University of South Carolina is complicating that narrative. Researchers found that in the context of repeated mild head injuries, a specific omega-3 fatty acid called EPA might actually do more harm than good. Instead of helping the brain heal, EPA appears to interfere with the biological processes that stabilize blood vessels after a trauma. This is particularly concerning because fish oil supplements are incredibly popular, often added to everything from snack bars to dairy alternatives. The study suggests that while these fats are generally healthy, they might create a metabolic vulnerability that prevents the brain from repairing itself properly after an impact, potentially leading to a buildup of harmful proteins associated with cognitive decline.
It is a surprising twist, because we usually associate omega-3s with reduced inflammation and better heart health. However, neuroscientist Ander Albayram and his team are the first to look specifically at how the brain responds to these supplements during the recovery phase of an injury. They discovered that EPA can disrupt the signaling pathways that tell the brain how to fix its own vascular structure. This doesn't mean fish oil is inherently toxic, but it highlights that the context of our health matters immensely. If you are an athlete or someone prone to minor head bumps, your supplement routine might be working against your recovery. This research opens up a new field of study into whether the brain has a natural resistance to certain high-dose supplements that we previously assumed were universally beneficial for everyone.
Next, graphene versus superbugs.
Scientists at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology have made a major breakthrough in the fight against antibiotic-resistant superbugs. They have been studying graphene oxide, a material made of a single layer of carbon atoms, and they found it has a remarkable ability to kill bacteria without touching human cells. The secret lies in the molecular structure of the graphene. It specifically targets a molecule called POP-G, which is a primary component of bacterial cell membranes but is completely absent in human cells. This allows the graphene to act like a precision-guided weapon. When it encounters bacteria, it attaches to the membrane and physically disrupts it, causing the cell to collapse. Because it relies on a physical mechanism rather than a chemical one, it is much harder for bacteria to develop resistance to it compared to traditional antibiotics.
This discovery is incredibly promising for everyday hygiene and medical applications. Since graphene oxide can be easily dispersed in water, it could be integrated into fabrics for masks, clothing, or even the bristles of toothbrushes to keep them permanently sterile. The researchers also noted that this material promotes faster wound healing, which is a huge plus for clinical settings where infections are a constant threat. One of the most impressive features is its durability. The antibacterial properties remain strong even after the material is washed multiple times. As we face a global crisis of drug-resistant infections, having a safe, non-toxic material that can selectively wipe out harmful pathogens while leaving our own healthy cells intact is a game-changer. It moves us closer to a future where we don't have to rely solely on failing chemical drugs.
Now, the Mediterranean diet.
We have known for a long time that the Mediterranean diet is great for longevity, but we haven't always understood the exact cellular mechanics. A new study in the journal Frontiers in Nutrition suggests the answer lies in our mitochondria, the power plants of our cells. Researchers found that older adults who stick to a diet rich in olive oil, legumes, and fish have significantly higher levels of 2 tiny proteins called humanin and SHMOs. These are known as mitochondrial microproteins, and they are produced by small sections of DNA that scientists used to think were useless junk. It turns out these microproteins play a vital role in protecting our bodies as we age. Human is linked to better insulin sensitivity and heart health, while SH-MUS appears to protect brain cells from the kind of structural damage that leads to Alzheimer's disease.
This research is fascinating because it shows how our food choices directly influence the genetic expression within our mitochondria. For a long time, these tiny genetic sequences were overlooked during the Human Genome Project because they were considered too short to be functional. Now, we see that they are essential regulators of cellular stress and health. By following the Mediterranean diet, people are essentially fueling the production of these protective molecules. This provides a clear biological explanation for why this specific way of eating reduces the risk of cognitive decline in cardiovascular disease. It's not just about general nutrition, it's about maintaining the health of our cellular engines. This study reinforces the idea that diet is one of the most powerful tools we have for healthy aging, working at a level much deeper than we previously realized.
Next, infections and dementia.
A massive study out of Finland has confirmed a troubling link between severe infections and the risk of developing dementia later in life. By analyzing the health records of over 375,000 people, researchers found that those who had been hospitalized for infections faced a much higher risk of cognitive decline. What makes this study unique is that the researchers were able to isolate the infection as an independent risk factor. In the past, it was unclear if the infection itself caused the brain damage, or if underlying conditions like heart disease were responsible for both the infection and the dementia. The data shows that even when you account for other health issues, a severe infection significantly increases the likelihood of a dementia diagnosis. This suggests that the systemic inflammation caused by an infection can have long-lasting damaging effects on the brain's delicate environment.
The biological explanation involves the blood-brain barrier, which normally acts as a shield for the brain. During a severe infection, the body's immune response becomes so intense that this barrier can become compromised. When that happens, inflammatory cells and harmful proteins can leak into the brain tissue, triggering a state of chronic neuroinflammation. This environment is toxic to brain cells and is a known hallmark of dementia. Additionally, infections can cause vascular problems like blood clotting issues, which further starve the brain of oxygen and nutrients. This research highlights the importance of preventing and quickly treating severe infections, especially in older adults. It's a reminder that a bout of pneumonia or a serious urinary tract infection isn't just a temporary setback. It could have profound implications for long-term brain health and the prevention of neurodegenerative diseases.
Now, heat and autism.
A new study published in Science of the Total Environment has found a link between extreme nighttime temperatures during pregnancy and an increased risk of autism in children. Researchers analyzed data from nearly 300,000 mother-child pairs in Southern California and found that when high heat occurred during the first 10 weeks or the final weeks of pregnancy, the risk of an autism diagnosis by age 5 rose by 13 to 15%. This is particularly significant because nighttime heat prevents the body from cooling down and recovering from daytime temperatures, which can cause significant physiological stress for a pregnant person. While genetics play a major role in autism, this study adds to a growing body of evidence that environmental factors during gestation can influence neurodevelopment. It highlights how the increasing frequency of heat waves could be a public health concern.
The study specifically looked at both daytime maximums and nighttime minimums, but the nighttime data showed a stronger correlation. This suggests that the lack of a cool-down period is what really impacts the developing fetus. We already know that maternal fever and other forms of heat stress can affect neural tube development, but this research focuses specifically on the autism spectrum. As global temperatures continue to rise, understanding these prenatal exposures becomes vital for maternal care. It's not just about comfort, it's about the potential long-term neurodevelopmental health of the next generation. This data from Kaiser Permanente, Southern California, provides a robust look at how our changing climate might be intersecting with developmental biology in ways we are only beginning to understand, urging a closer look at how we protect expectant mothers during extreme weather events.
Next, psilocybin for OCD.
For people living with obsessive-compulsive disorder, standard treatments like therapy and daily medication don't always provide enough relief. However, a new clinical trial suggests that psilocybin, the active compound in magic mushrooms, could offer a new path forward. The study found that repeated weekly doses of psilocybin were not only safe, but also led to a significant reduction in the severity of obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors. Psilocybin works by binding to serotonin receptors in the brain, which researchers believe increases cognitive flexibility. This is crucial for OCD patients, who often struggle with very rigid, repetitive thought patterns. By breaking these cycles, the compound helps the brain move away from habitual responses. The trial showed that the benefits were substantial for those who had previously failed to find success with traditional psychiatric medications or behavioral therapies.
What is particularly interesting is how psilocybin targets specific neural networks associated with error monitoring and habitual behavior. In people with OCD, these circuits are often overactive, leading to the feeling that something is wrong even when it isn't. Brain imaging suggests that psilocybin can reset or dampen this overactivity. This line of research actually started back in the 1990s, when a doctor met a patient who claimed their OCD symptoms vanished after using psychedelics. Now, decades later, we are finally seeing controlled clinical evidence that supports those early observations. While more research is needed to determine the long-term effects and the best dosing schedules, this trial provides a glimmer of hope for a condition that can be incredibly debilitating. It represents a shift toward using psychedelic-assisted therapy to treat the underlying brain patterns of chronic mental health conditions.
Now, religion and politics.
A new study in the Journal of Race, Ethnicity, and Politics has uncovered a fascinating trend among the growing number of non-religious Americans. It turns out that people who were raised Christian but later left the faith, often called Dones, tend to hold much more progressive political views than those who were never religious at all. This leftward shift seems to be a direct reaction to the perceived threat of conservative Christian groups in the political sphere. When people leave a religion because they disagree with its political involvement, they don't just become neutral. They often move further to the left as a form of backlash. This religious residue means that their past experiences continue to shape their current political identity. As the non-religious population grows, these internal divisions between lifelong secular individuals and former believers are becoming a major factor in American politics.
The researchers suggest that the active role of the Christian right in politics is actually driving people away from the church and into the arms of progressive movements. This theory of political backlash explains why we see such a sharp ideological divide within the secular community. For many Dones, leaving the church was a political act as much as a spiritual one. They view conservative religious organizations as a threat to their values, which fuels their commitment to liberal causes. Meanwhile, those who were raised without any religion don't necessarily have that same reactive motivation, so their views tend to be more moderate by comparison. This demographic shift is significant because non-religious Americans are projected to become the largest group in the country soon. Understanding what drives their political behavior is key to predicting the future of the American ideological landscape.
Finally, developments at CDC.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has been through a turbulent period, but there are signs of both resilience and ongoing struggle. This week, the agency celebrated the 75th anniversary of its Epidemic Intelligence Service, the famous disease detectives who investigate outbreaks worldwide. Despite being on the chopping block for budget cuts last year, the program was spared and continues to deploy fellows to handle everything from measles in the U.S. to diphtheria in Micronesia. However, behind the scenes, morale remains a challenge. Reports have surfaced that the interim leadership suppressed a scientific study showing that COVID vaccines reduced hospitalizations by more than half last winter. This has raised serious concerns about political interference in scientific reporting. While the agency is still performing its core duties, these internal tensions highlight the delicate balance between public health science and the administrative pressures of the current government.
The suppression of the vaccine report is particularly controversial because it involves a standard method of calculating effectiveness that the CDC has used for years. The interim director reportedly raised concerns about the calculations, but former officials suggest the move was more about avoiding retaliation from the administration than about scientific accuracy. This creates a difficult environment for the scientists who are trying to provide the public with clear, data-driven health guidance. On one hand, you have the success of the fellowship program, which is still actively training the next generation of epidemiologists to fight invasive strep and drug overdoses. On the other hand, the agency is grappling with significant staff cuts and a lack of transparency at the top. How the CDC navigates these challenges will determine its ability to respond to the next major health crisis and maintain public trust in its findings.
That is our roundup for today. Thank you for joining us for these important updates. Be sure to follow us for your next daily briefing on the stories that matter most.